So many of our favorites to watch. Oh look, now they're being bashed. I guess that's what we should expect on the Bullied Nostalgia Podcast. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Bullied Nostalgia Podcast. The Bullied Nostalgia Podcast is available anywhere you can find a podcast. If you are listening and you have something to say, you want to give some input on future episodes, or have some suggestions on how we do this thing, you can reach us at bulliedpod@gmail.com. And let's jump into it. The Bullied Nostalgia Podcast is a time when we get together and review movies and TV shows that John and I loved growing up. And then my two boys tell us that we had
terrible opinions.
Something like that. Well, I guess this is the first episode of season 2. And so season 2, we're doing things a little bit differently. And so, as always, I'm joined by Kylen.
Hello.
Chance.
That's me.
And John.
Hey.
But today we also have a guest. We're hanging out with Ryan.
Hello.
And I'm Tim.
He's not important.
He's not important. I don't know how much credibility there is to this, but a listener once told me that we all sound the same and we should do everything in funny voices all the time.
What's your voice?
Welcome to Bullied Nostalgia Podcast. Oh boy.
That might get copyright strike.
Yeah. You think your impression's that good?
I would say so.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good about our podcast right now. I got an email from a service that wanted me to pay them to keep track of it and update me every day. But it told me that last month, Bullied Nostalgia was rated the 104th most listened to podcast about movies and TV. So that's a pretty big deal. 104.
Wow.
Okay.
In movies and TV.
In movies and TV. The disclaimer, yeah. Okay, so for some context.
You're killing me. You've been beating around the bush the entire time.
Yeah, Kai's
We'll get there.
Kai's been itching to talk about this for days. For context, Ryan's here not because he has a lot of nostalgia for the movie that we are talking about today, but instead that he was the catalyst for fate to ensure that we did. John ran into him in Costco a month ago, and Ryan, out of the blue, told John that he had watched the Beethoven movie with his kids. Little did he know, John had been chomping at the bit to do Beethoven second for as long as we've had this podcast. Before we get into opinions, Kai really wants to talk about this movie.
So Beethoven's Second takes place in 4 chapters. Chapter 1 is essentially the introduction. You meet Beethoven and family. Beethoven keeps on sneaking out and looking for girls.
So hold on.
Beethoven's a dog.
We need to get a little bit of context
Weird,
here.
really fast.
Okay, so Beethoven the dog keeps on sneaking out looking for girls when everybody's at work and school. The work is really weird. They sell air fresheners, I think, but I'm gonna skip over that. Essentially, he finds a female dog, Missy. Suddenly it is revealed that Missy's owners are exes and the girl is just evil and the guy cares for the dog. Yet through some strange laws, she's able to take the dog and use him as blackmail.
This is like John explanation.
I know, but this is all necessary, Chance.
This movie has a lot of lore.
Okay.
Beethoven lore
Then,
is extensive.
Beethoven and Missy escape and flee. Chapter 1 over. Chapter 2, I call this one Puppies. 10 weeks later, it is revealed that Beethoven and Missy had 4 puppies. Missy is taken again, and now the kids take care of the puppies. That is the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3 starts. I call this one Wacky Cartoon Characters Doing Goofy Stuff. They go to a cabin, and shenanigans ensue with puppies and Beethoven and all that good stuff. That is my favorite chapter. Eventually, Missy is reunited with Beethoven, and the bad guys are stopped, and
Kylen's running out of steam for plot.
chapter 4 starts, which is just the conclusion. That's it.
So talking about deep lore, Beethoven's Second is the second movie in many
no
Beethoven
idea.
movies. So for our listeners, there was a Beethoven movie, and as per usual, our family never owned the original movie. We only own sequels, or threequels, or whatever it is. Kylen will be glad to know that when I went to rent this movie, there was 5 Beethoven movies that showed up,
What?
along with a Beethoven Christmas special. So I feel like jumping into the sequel is normally what we do, but this time we actually have an expert at the table. Ryan has seen the first movie, and so I feel like we really need to tap into his knowledge of what about the first movie do we need to know that affects our commentary on the second movie.
Specifically about the air fresheners. That is like the one loose end that does not make sense.
So Mr. Newton, he owns a small air freshener business, and he was trying to get investors involved. The subplot, I guess, because this is a movie without real
Plot.
plot.
Yeah.
It's kind of just a bunch of subplots that twist together and make a movie. The villains were the investors, and
I think
they
it
were
was-
actually going to try to swindle him out of his business.
Kylen, you have not stopped talking about this movie.
Yes.
I feel like
Why
He
is
told me
it?
nobody
This-
was allowed to talk about it.
No, I just
No,
mentioned.
we would
Okay.
try and shut Kylen down when he
I
would
would
start
just
these
mention
conversations.
Beethoven and then call it good.
we'd be talking about anything else.
Yeah.
We'd be like, speaking of Beethoven's second.
That was how half
trying
our
to shoehorn it in
conversation
there.
Something magical happens in that third chapter, specifically with Beethoven. So, Rice, the oldest child, she is out boy chasing, in the same way Beethoven was out girl chasing. So
Their stories like
parallel.
intersect.
They
Oh my
parallel.
goodness.
It's a family.
Rice finds 2 different boys, and she's trying to pick one.
Yeah,
But
but
they're-
Seth is the bad boy.
Oh, Seth is the bad boy.
Yeah, that's the
He has
issue.
an earring.
And a dirt bike.
And he drives a Jeep at the end.
Yeah.
Do we remember the name of
And
the
went
other
on
guy?
to be a bad guy in his grown-up life, too.
So the guy who played Seth,
Danny Masterson.
Danny Masterson, that's right, Ryan. He, of course,
Hyde from that 70s show.
is
a
Hyde
big
from
role.
that 70s show. That's where you know him from.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, anyways. So she finds 2 people. One of them is just not a good guy, and the other one is a bad boy. And she's really intrigued by this guy that isn't a good guy. And so she sees him at a party. And he convinces her to go into his bedroom, and he locks the door. This is going back to Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves in a message about consent. She's not having a good time in this situation. But then Beethoven decides now is a good time to destroy the foundation of this house.
Yes.
And he tears this house wall from wall.
This is the scene where we learn that Beethoven is an invincible super being who can destroy buildings with brute force.
The whole building falls into the lake, as well as the guy who's making unwanted advances on her. And then she gloats and makes fun of him from the second floor. But she's stuck up there, right?
Yeah.
There's no
Well,
way
it's
down. The
interesting 'cause
door is locked.
Yeah.
She's stuck from a door that's locked from the inside of the room.
Yeah.
And
That-
then that's what he do,
yeah.
because they zoom in on the doorknob and you can see it's the kind that let you open.
No, I think above that there's a deadlock that needs a key.
All those times that you got a deadbolt your bedroom, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
From-
that was
from
the more
the
strange
outside, right? Like that kind of would lock someone in their room. He turns into a werewolf at night.
Yeah, it's like a locked room mystery.
Kylen made a comment the other day. He said, this was not at all the movie that I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And I can see that. It is really strange.
It
Yeah.
feels like watching a TV show at 10 times speed.
It does.
Every 5 minutes is a different episode with its own subplot.
Okay,
that
yeah.
comes together. at
They
the very
enter
end.
a burger eating contest.
And
Yep.
then Beethoven fast forwards time so that he can eat faster.
There was a
Yes.
lot of hamburger punching.
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
technique, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
The
that's
one,
what you
the
said.
3-year champion has a really good technique of slapping his burgers putting them into just very skinny.
It made me uncomfortable watching them eat burgers
Yeah.
on fast forward. And also the 3-year champion wasn't really eating burgers. He was just
kind of
slapping them across his face.
The burger slap.
I told John that I hadn't seen this movie, but during the fair, there was a point when Ted was rescuing the girl that he liked from the bully. I was like, wait a second, I have seen this movie before.
Oh my goodness,
And
that
so-
scene is fantastic.
It was very strange that I completely forgot the first 2/3 of the movie, and then
Repressed nostalgia.
That's our offshoot podcast.
We didn't want to.
We help
remember
people
that.
rediscover movies they forgot they had seen.
yeah, no, it was very strange because it was like, do you want to see what my dog can do? And it's like, that's a very weird way to approach a bullying situation. And he just did a couple very non-tricks, and then he's like, I know what he's gonna say next. And then he said, Beethoven, bite this guy in the wiener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted is the second child, right?
That's
He's
right.
the middle child. So he is short, and that is his only characteristic.
He's
so,
a nerd.
No, he wants to play baseball. Nerds don't play baseball.
Hey, he never gets any closure on that.
Yeah.
That's true.
There is very little closure in this movie. I
Okay,
feel.
so
Maybe it's in Beethoven's fifth.
I want to say,
The Christmas special ties up on the loose end.
this
I
is
just looked it up.
actually-
There's also Beethoven's Big Break. So there are 7 Beethoven.
Oh,
movies.
my star.
I did a little bit of reading before watching the movie. The person who was most in charge of this movie was John Hughes. I don't like John Hughes, and this is a very John Hughes movie, and the fact that there's a lot of loose ends that don't get any closure is very much a fingerprint of his style.
So, anyways, back to what we were saying. So Ted is the. I need closure on this. Okay?
No,
Okay?
this guy, like the movie,
Kylen.
there will be no closure.
Re-listening to some of the old podcasts, and Kylen does this same thing so consistently. We were talking about, John, what is your feelings about the podcast throughout this? And John got maybe 30 seconds in, and Kai said, I've come up with a new allegory!
So Ted really wants to play baseball, but he's too short. He really wants a girl, but he's too short. And then a bully shows up, and he tells Beethoven to eat his wiener, which...
Okay, let's take a couple steps back and talk about what this movie is, and then we can get lost in the weeds again. Beethoven was a movie that came out in 1992, and it made $147 million, which, for a low-budget movie, is a wicked return. This movie that we watched was never supposed to happen. The movie that Ryan watched last month with David Duchovny stealing air fresheners was the complete package. Then they made almost $150 million off of it, and they said,
We like money. Let's make more.
We like money. So they cranked this one out. This one came out in 1993, so they were 1 year apart.
Wow.
That means as of the movie releasing, they had no intention of making a sequel. This wasn't in pre-production.
Yeah.
The movie made a ton of money, and then they're like, let's do another one of these crazy fast. So they slapped this thing together in no time at all. Only cost them $15 million, and they made 118. Diminishing returns off the first one, for sure, but still,
That's an incredible amount of money.
it's an incredible return on their investment. So it's one of those things where, like Chance said, it just kind of feels like a few adventures with this family. There is a through line in this, the romance of the dogs and the puppies
And Ted.
and Regina Ted being short. That's not what I meant.
You've got this real connection to Ted, Paul.
I will say I had a very strange feeling when watching this show that I don't think I've had for anything else on the podcast. Normally, I watch these with at least one other person. This time was by myself. And I was just about halfway through. And I was like, why am I doing this?
What am I doing with my life?
What led me down this path to be watching this movie again? I don't even have anything to say about that. I still don't know, really. It kind of feels like a fever dream. That I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And then Kylen's like, let's talk about Beethoven. The only stuff that I bring to the table is the pop culture relevancy. And there were some of the characters in it that I really recognize. The person who is inescapable, though, in pop culture is Bonnie Hunt. She plays the mom. Where do people know that they know her from?
Well, it was weird because I walked past TV screen playing Jerry Maguire. And so she's in that movie. And I saw her and I'm like, Beethoven's second.
She is in Jerry Maguire. I was segueing to the fact that she's in everything, whether you know it or not. This was her breakout role. Beethoven's first, I guess.
Yeah.
But she would go on to be in everything. You might know her from potentially a future, what do we call it, repressed nostalgia episode. Yeah. Jumanji.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yep.
You might know her as the mom in the Cheaper by the Dozen movies. You might know her as the voice of Sally in Cars. You might know her as the voice of Bunny Hops in Zootopia. Literally, her IMDb is massive. And a lot of them are things like Jerry Maguire, where it's just something that's in your life. But a lot of the stuff that she's been in has been touchstones in people's childhood. I was totally surprised. Easily the person with the most massive, far-reaching movie roles in my life. The opposite of that, I guess, would be the dad, Charles Grodin. He had already been a celebrity for many, 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 many years. This was like the end of his career.
I had a friend give me a hard time because I didn't know Charles Grodin. He chided me very harshly, saying not to disparage the good name of Charles Grodin.
Okay. Your friend takes it very seriously, eh?
Oh, yes.
I think the only role that sticks out for me for Charles Grodin is that he was the bad guy in The Great Muppet Caper. Oh, Miss Piggy, how could you? When he wraps the diamonds around her neck and frames her. Yeah, the cast is really weird.
Everything about this movie is really weird. Well, I don't think you need to specify.
I think when a cast includes at least 7 dogs, you know the movie is really weird.
It's a lot more than 7.
It is a lot more than 7. It is a lot.
Chance, when you think about it, not only do they have to have 6 dogs, but also every dog shows up in different ages. There is a dream sequence where there's like 200 dogs.
I forgot about that scene. That's real.
It's a lot of St. Bernards.
101 Beethovens.
Because they were filming puppies in this, they had a very short shelf life where they could record them before they aged out of that exact appearance that they wanted. So they had open agreements with several puppy farms in the area where they would borrow the puppies for a week or two of shooting and then return them and then get a different batch of puppies from another place and rinse repeat, because they needed to film these puppies at a certain size and they were aging out of it too rapidly. They're such big dogs. So I have no idea how many dogs were in this movie, but it is a ton.
Talking about the dogs, I really appreciate...
Kylen's got such a weird fascination with this movie.
Movie's so good.
What was I going to say before Kylen got really excited?
Talking about the puppies.
I just miss movies where dogs do not have CGI'd mouths. Maybe one day we'll do an episode on Homeward Bound 2. Just like movies where they are able to communicate things through the animals without having to CG them.
Yeah, I do think that they did do a very good job at making emotion of specifically Beethoven.
Yeah, I'm very happy that Beethoven does not talk in this movie.
Every other dog is a dog. Beethoven is a human being pretending to be a dog.
He's crazy smart.
He's a magical super god.
He is.
He's like a minor deity, I think. He, in the first movie, he was the magical being who solved everyone's problems. He helped uncover the plot for the crooked investors to steal the business. He got Rice to be noticed by the boy that she liked.
Who's never seen again in this movie.
Yeah, she just goes through boys, like boys go through hamburgers, really.
Like dogs go through
She
hamburgers.
flattens them first.
Yeah. He helped Ted deal with bullies, and Emily, at one point, they decided that the mom was ready to go back to work, and so they were going to leave the kids with a babysitter. Babysitter was taking care of the older two kids, and Emily was playing near the pool and fell in, and Beethoven from the Newton's own backyard figured out what was going on and saved her.
So
He made it-
Beethoven used spidey senses to jump
Yeah.
over fences
Yep.
into a random house's backyard and save a child from a pool.
Yes.
Well, I feel like that's helpful to know. Those superpowers weren't really established in the second movie.
Yeah.
So when he pulled the house down,
This explains the lore.
so much.
I didn't realize it was Beethoven's Second Covenant. What these movies really were.
While it's on my mind, John likes to talk about music and soundtrack. And I feel like this soundtrack was very in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any comments?
Well, the music came right back to me when I started, even when it starts out on Beethoven's snout at the beginning. There's music playing. I'm like, I know this music.
I know this nose.
I know this.
I knows this music.
So anyways, there was definitely moments in this movie that I remembered I would know what was going to happen. Like, oh, he stepped out on the deck. I'm like, I know the newspaper boy's going to come, throw a paper, and knock the coffee.
Yeah.
I know he's going to knock the plant off next, whatever. So I knew things were coming, but my body reacted even stronger to the music in this movie than it did.
Wait, there's no closure to the newspaper boy.
No.
That's
That's
weird.
what we were talking about.
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
also only
That's-
apologizes the second time.
It's weird how that's the only thing in this movie that doesn't have closure.
The only thing.
I think they try and throw it dun 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 at some point. So they're trying to throw little like nods at Beethoven here and there, the composer. But and
You don't think it was weird that they called the one dog Tchaikovsky instead of Tchaikovsky?
Yeah.
Speaking of the dogs, Mo is the best dog, right? For
That's
sure.
correct.
He does a backflip over a dumpster truck at one point.
Yeah.
On a skateboard.
Mo gets on a skateboard, starts going down the driveway. A guy puts down a garbage can on the skateboard, and he goes flying over the dump truck.
Like, oh, I'm washing the car, and then I noticed that my dog's doing something. I thought it was going to circle back and like get the car dirty or like drop garbage all over the place because it was a garbage man drop. He just goes into some grass clippings. That's it. That's the joke.
Mm-hmm. And that is also one of the many slow motion scenes.
Oh,
We mentioned
yes.
that Beethoven has the power to control time when eating burgers, but he also slows it constantly in this movie. 90% of the scenes where Beethoven is running, it's in slow motion.
Whoa.
So you get to see his jowls flap up like the blessed wings he was drawn from. Demigods in their own right.
Potentially one of the greatest influences this movie might have had on our lives is that we ended up naming our first dog Missy.
You think subliminally
Yes.
that's because of this movie?
Absolutely.
It came like 10 years later.
I know. That is the power of Beethoven's second.
He
It was-
controls time.
I never, I thought, I was like,
He's
oh,
got a compelling argument.
like,
Tim.
I think,
Don't be so dismissive.
It
Peter.
was
Beethoven
Dad who
controls time.
named that dog.
He loved that movie.
I wanted to name it Rags.
yeah. Tim, you said you bring to the table like pop culture things, but what about your nostalgia for this movie? Do you remember watching it when we were kids?
Yeah, we were talking a couple weeks ago and you were talking about a waterfall or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
I don't have the same type of beat for beat recollection that I did with Spaceballs or Batman or whatever. This is a different kind of childhood memory.
Repressed nostalgia?
There's nothing wrong with this movie. It's kind of.
See, this is why I like it. Okay?
Like, it's not good, but
It's not bad enough to be great, and it's not good enough to be great. It's just kind of in the middle.
it's
Whoa,
this
hey, that's
weird.
It's
this
bad
weird-
enough to be fantastic.
This is Kai's favorite movie, you guys.
It's just so strange. You don't see movies like this anymore.
Because John Hughes is dead. And I
Praise the Beethoven.
It's so weird. Like, same thing for me when they get to the bully scene and Ted's like, I'm going to show you tricks. I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. And, oh, I remember them punching burgers and eating them and stuff like that. Is just, if you had asked me what movie any of those memories were from, I don't know if I even could have told you that they were from Beethoven's Second.
What about Beethoven's First?
You ever seen that movie?
I know I did. Hearing Ryan describe the first movie, I remember the scene where he saves her from the pool,
yeah.
but most of those things I don't remember. I'm sure if I rewatched it, I would have the same weird reminders that I had this time, but this movie is so freaking weird. Why is her name Rice? I was
might be mistaken.
sure it was Bryce. That's the only thing that made sense to me.
And then Seth
then
is
he's
like,
like-
rice like the food?
And she's like, yeah. And it's like, she's just saying that to make him feel better because he misheard. And then I'm on IMDb and it's Rice. And I was like, who names their kid Rice?
I think that's a cool name. Did they keep all the same actors, Ryan, for this movie?
Yeah, I think they got switched out because after this one, it looked like they all went
Yeah.
direct to VHS.
They didn't have time to recast. They pumped it out so quickly after. The girl who plays Rice, though, for the geeks at the table or people that I've had a stake in raising, she voiced Supergirl in all of the DC cartoons.
Oh.
Supergirl, who famously has never been locked in a room with a boy who wanted to smooch her.
Smoocher.
Speaking of the names of characters, I had a very hard time remembering the names of characters, except for Gina. The reason being, the male counterpart to her, Floyd, is very Italian. So whenever he would say her name, it always sounded to me like she was saying Vegeta instead, who is the popular antagonist of the Dragon Ball series. Because at the very end, there's a part where Regina falls off a cliff and Floyd goes, Regina! And I swear he yelled Vegeta. That was the reason I enjoyed this movie, was a dog movie starring Vegeta from Dragon Ball for no reason at all.
Her New York accent was very strong, and actually, I don't know, it was just very weird hearing her talk. The puppies belong to her mother, and the mother belongs to me. And it's like the legalistic stuff of this movie.
Yeah.
I would really like to know the story of how those two came to be
In a relationship.
married.
Yeah, the schlub that owned Missy is just like, how did he get her in the first place, right? And
she-
obviously they're not compatible, so she's divorcing him.
And she didn't marry him for money because
Yeah.
he's poor.
Yeah.
So what happened there?
She clearly has upper echelon tastes, though. It's weird that she would have settled for this guy and then
Well,
also
she's dating Floyd.
taken him to
Yeah.
town. That's another strange thing, because it's like, what does she see in Floyd? Because
Yeah.
he seems
Okay.
poor also.
And she
So
just
what is-
criticizes him all the time.
Yeah. She's like, you should know not to eat with your mouth. You should stand with
your
talk
posture,
with your
my
mouth open.
trainer.
Yeah, like all this stuff. You should wear a shirt, and then he just doesn't.
It's funny because it seems like he genuinely cares for her too, but he's just like this.
He's
the
just her
entire
punching
movie.
bag.
Yeah, exactly.
And what was he getting out of the relationship?
exactly.
Because it's like, once she gets his $50,000, what's he gonna do? She's not gonna share the money with him.
She did have a really good sense of fashion. She always wore a neat outfit every scene. I don't know if that's like a theme in the 90s, that female antagonists had to be like fashionable. She was in the Batman Forever movie we watched.
Yeah, we saw her recently.
Yeah.
The role was supposed to go to Madonna, but Madonna was unavailable, so she offered it to her best friend, which is weird.
In the Batman movie, you mean?
No, in this
In
movie.
this movie?
Yeah.
It was offered to Madonna in Beethoven's Second?
Madonna would have made it so much better.
So things get really weird.
I honestly believe that. I'm a big fan of Madonna.
So
I'm a big fan of
Floyd was played by
pre-2000s Madonna. I
Chris
suppose.
Penn, and Chris Penn's brother had been married to Madonna.
Sean Penn married Madonna?
Yeah. So he wasn't sure if he could even take this part. He asked his brother about it, and he's like, should I do this? I know you have history with Madonna, and like, I don't do kids' movies. And up until this point, Chris had done like True Romance.
He was in
Reservoir
Dogs. Footloose, I think, was probably the most family friendly.
Right. He had done very well received adult movies, but none that were financially successful. So Sean essentially told him, dude, I know this is outside of your wheelhouse. Don't worry about the Madonna stuff.
Machine.
But this is how you're going to get recognized. This is how you're going to get that paycheck.
It was weird how he went from he was the bumbling sidekick, and then when he notices that Missy had escaped, he's just like, I'll get those kids and the little dogs too.
I love that Chance was just like, I don't know if I have any more notes. And Kai was like, don't worry, I got this.
Drunk teenagers who are pouring their drinks on a dog.
Yeah.
They deserved it.
On
Yeah.
a super
They
space
did.
deity.
Certainly.
Yeah.
On the super space deity.
But I want to know, whose house was that?
It was a rich guy.
Taylor, what's his name? It's their summer
Yeah.
cottage.
When you're rich, you have more than one.
Right.
More than one cottage.
Okay, let's hop over to closing. Kai?
So imagine you're making a cookie. You got the dough, and you're just about to put it in the oven. So you put it's on your counter, and you're just about to put it in, and then you accidentally knock down your spice rack, and every single spice you have is poured into the dough.
Garlic cookie.
And then you put it in anyways, and bake it and eat it. That is this movie.
It's everything to you?
Everything and more.
Allspice.
I feel like your cookie analogy is being pushed to its limit.
It is. Every time I'm trying to see how far I can take it. Imagine Beethoven if he was a cookie. That's his movie.
I feel like if he was an ice cream pop, it would be like with the weird gumball
Oh,
eyes
like
that are
saggy,
yeah,
like-
yeah, they got misshapen from.
An air freshener cookie.
An air freshener cookie. Those are so common.
Just going until one sticks.
All right, Chance.
But hold on, I
Oh.
just want to quickly ask Kai, after seeing this movie, will you watch the first Beethoven movie?
No, never.
Will you watch the third Beethoven?
Will you watch the Christmas?
I don't think I will by myself.
Okay, just so you know, Ryan said there's more air freshener stuff in the first one, so... Sorry, go ahead, Chance.
I would probably say this is going to be one of the first movies I do not put in the plus side of the scale. I think this movie is too disconnected and has too many loose ends to be a rational movie you watch because you want to enjoy something. But if you were looking for something to make fun of, this movie is a great time. So I'm going to give this a -4 probably.
Wow.
Usually every
high
scene-
praise, low praise.
Weird praise. It's every scene usually has something really stupid or silly you can joke about. Like Beethoven being an all-powerful super deity who can tear apart buildings.
He recognizes their car all the time. And I'm like, I guess he's not colorblind.
Yeah.
And looking at their plate as well.
Never has their
Beethoven
license
can read.
plate.
The villains always look at the kids and be like, oh, those are kids. Ew.
It took Regina a while for her to recognize
To see
who they
past
were.
her hatred of kids.
Yeah, to
see
realize that they were the kids that
she knew.
Yeah,
We
from the
all know
apartment.
you
From
hate-
my apartment that one time.
We all know you hate animals and children.
There is a scene where the guy who owns Missy says to Regina, it's common knowledge you hate dogs, which brings all the way back to Superman 4.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even pick up on that. In the Superman 4 movie, Clark Kent, or Superman, says to Lex Luthor,
You just gave up his secret identity on the podcast event?
It's common knowledge you hate all animals and children.
All right, John. You got your wish. You've been asking for Beethoven's
Yes,
second for
yes.
months. Did it live up to the hype?
I was glad we watched it. Like, it was a movie that I watched a lot as a kid and just had not seen since I was a kid.
Will you see it again?
I don't think so. I mean, I'd probably be more inclined to watch the first Beethoven movie than I would to watch this movie again. It had been like 25 years since I saw it last or something, so maybe in 25 years.
Start the countdown clock.
Imagine me being in my 60s. And I'm
yeah, Charles Grogan.
John, would you watch a large man smash burgers against his face again?
You'll be watching it with the same reverence that old people these days watch Charlton Heston movies. Oh yes, Planet of the Apes.
Damn you, dirty apes!
But yeah,
Sala, how could you?
it was.
They blew it up!
Anyways, I was really glad we watched it. Brought back a lot of memories. Not gonna watch it again.
John watched this at 2 a.m. or something.
And then
Do you think that affect your viewing experience?
Probably a little bit.
It's like watching the movie from The Ring. Watching Beethoven at midnight causes something to awaken in the god dog.
Beethoven crawls out of the TV.
The phone rings. Woof, woof, woof. What? Who is this? I gotta get out of here.
John's just hallucinating all day.
We're not here.
He's gonna be like, well, the podcast is over, and then we just fade away like wisps of smoke, and he's sitting in the middle of an alley downtown.
No, John's sitting here and we're having a conversation,
Oh,
but to him
no.
we're all just dogs. We are the 4 puppies from the movie.
All right, Ryan. As someone who was roped into this chaos, but has context, having watched the first movie, are you likely to go further down this rabbit hole? Are we going to Beethoven third?
No. No, I hope for the rest of my days I never have to think about Beethoven. To kind of add on to Chance's statements, it's disjointed and strange, and it just seems like a product of its time. A lot of it counts on people not thinking too hard of it on it at first. You gotta get that fridge logic going, where it's like, this doesn't make any sense, while you're standing at the fridge getting a Coke or something. Man, why did I watch this movie? The first one did nothing for me. I feel like this one was a little bit better.
Okay.
Maybe the value of the money goes down, but the quality of the movie goes up.
Yeah.
So we gotta watch 7 now.
No.
Yeah, maybe this last one, if it made no money, is the perfect movie.
Maybe the Beethovens were the friends we made along the way.
Maybe we're all Beethoven.
The next time John approaches you about doing a podcast, what's the
gonna be-
likelihood of that ever happening?
I would say 10 out of 10.
Okay,
like 100%
okay.
chance.
For me, this movie, John had brought it up so many times that he was like, let's do Beethoven, let's do Beethoven, let's do Beethoven. I'm pretty sure as far back as when we were picking a Land Before Time movie. So right at the start of this podcast, John was pushing Beethoven second, and I had no interest in rewatching this movie whatsoever. In retrospect,
It's better than Land Before Time 3.
It is!
It's a better experience than I was expecting it to be. And I always rate movies by saying the likelihood of me revisiting them. John had to trick me into doing a second season of a podcast to make me watch it this time. So I can't imagine what stakes will have to be on the table for me to watch this movie again.
Well, you watched it alone this time. Maybe if I incentivized by saying we could watch it together.
No.
When you're 60,
Yeah, when I'm 60.
it's a date.
On your birthday, when you're 60.
Yeah, John and I have a tradition that on our birthday, the other person has to do whatever the birthday person chooses to do with
Right.
their...
Beethoven Marathon. All of them.
Okay, well, I don't have anything else to say. Everybody else done with this noise?
Praise Beethoven.
Praise Beethoven!
This is the beginning of the Beethoven cult.
Is that our new saying for season 2?
No.
Praise Beethoven!
No, thank you.
I will do it every episode.
Look out for weirdos.
Praise Beethoven.